We are live.
Yay!
Nitya, we're live.
Awesome. So hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining. I am Marie Pierre. I'm the co-president of UCLA GradSWE. Who we are the Society of Women Engineers, the graduate division, and we aim to increase the diversity of individuals in engineering, specifically women, through empowerment, through activities like these, professional development, and as well as to just build a community of female engineers. If you'd like to learn more about us, our website is there, as well as our Facebook and Instagram. And if you're currently a graduate engineering student at UCLA and you haven't already applied to our scholarship, the scholarship application is due this Friday. It's a super short application. We have over $2,500 worth of scholarships specifically for graduate students, $4,500 available that you're competing with undergraduates as well. So we highly encourage you to apply. That QR code there will bring you straight to the application link. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us through any of our social media to get more information. I'm super excited about this event. This one hits close to home, as Laurence, who you see on the screen, is actually my sister, a fellow UCLA alumni. And so being able to do this event with cLabs and Celo and my sister is amazing. And so I hope you guys have a great time. We have a great agenda planned for you. And so thank you. And I'll pass it off to you, Laurence.
Awesome. Thank you so much, MP. I'm super excited as well for this, being a UCLA alumni. I first wanted to say welcome to the Celo community. It's a community composed of designers, developers, dreamers, and doers working towards creating a more prosperous world. And like I said, bringing this back to my alma mater means a lot to me. I want to start off by talking about my journey and how it led me to Celo. I was actually an athlete my entire life and swam for UCLA when I was an undergraduate there. One could say that my life was defined by my athletic pursuits, and I never quite examined a life outside of athletics. Unfortunately, my fourth year at UCLA, I slipped on Bruin Walk and I broke my shoulder. This forced me to medically retire from swimming, and I wasn't really sure what I should do next. So when my body recovered, I actually got into triathlon and became pretty good at it. So I thought, hey, why not try becoming a professional athlete? I knew I enjoyed athletics, and I thought it would be this amazing platform to do a lot of good in the world. But as time progressed, I realized that actually athletics wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't this platform of empowerment. And at the end of the day, the thing that mattered was my performance and not really how many people I could help. I realized that what I loved about athletics was my ability to help others and to teach, not my result. Luckily, when I came to this realization, my colleague and my friend and now colleague Vanessa introduced me to a company called Celo. It had this incredible mission, but I had no idea what blockchain was. All I knew was that Bitcoin was this super volatile thing, and that was it. But I quickly realized that blockchain was merely the tool that was best suited to bring the mission of Celo to life. So I'm going to jump in right now to what Celo is and why I personally am so motivated to work for a company that works towards doing good in the world on a daily basis. I'm going to start with this one statistic, 1.7 billion. There's 1.7 billion people in the world who are unbanked. To me, that is a staggering statistic. That means that 1.7 billion people can't save money securely, they don't have access to money when they need it, and they can't pay bills and transfer money with confidence. Not having access to a bank is a huge limiter. And this leads me to this quote. How do you change the story for the 1.7 billion people who don't have access? The story of money hasn't been changed since the 16th century. We need to change that story so all people are included, our planet is taken care of, and society is not living in more debt than money created. Celo is all about empowering and meeting the needs of people everywhere. It's an open platform that makes financial tools accessible to anyone with a mobile phone. So to explain this, let me talk about it through an existing mental model. Think about what tools like Twitter and blogging did to content creation. Before these platforms, content was curated from large organizations, and the community didn't have a place to voice their opinions. Now, with Twitter, with these blogging places, anyone can create content online, and there are many tools and use cases for doing so. We imagine a similar future for money, now that we can program features into it. We see 5 initial features on the Celo platform that can help enable this world of prosperity. I'm going to give you a brief overview of these 5 and then talk about 2 current examples being built on the Celo platform. So number 1, earning money into existence. We believe there shouldn't be more debt than money in existence. Number 2, money as an ecology. Every community has unique needs and money should reflect that. Number 3, natural capital-backed currency. Money should be backed by the things we care about the most. Demurrage, having a small fee for holding money, which has already been proven in many communities that it helps them stay out of recession. Universal basic income. Everyone should have a roof over their heads and food on the table. Let me dive into my favorite one. So this one, natural capital-backed currency. I graduated from UCLA with a degree in marine biology and actually became a published author. So this really means a lot to me. I know many of you work on projects like my sister Marie-Pierre aimed at sustainability. How can we support that on the blockchain? Well, why don't we back money through the things we care about the most, such as clean water, rainforests, the ocean? That's what we actually care about, and that's what's going to allow our society to prosper. We envision this as a multi-step approach, each of these steps building on the last. The Celo platform allows this in several ways. Number 1, resource reduction. So blockchains are notorious for having these huge resource consumptions. They're very, very resource intensive. Celo is 17,000 times lighter than a traditional blockchain. That's really wonderful. And we've worked really, really hard to do this. Number 2, of course, you can't run a network on zero energy. On the blockchain, anyone who owns Celo Gold actually has voting rights. So changes are done through the community. So when we talk about carbon neutrality and you have this platform that can't have zero consumption, we actually brought up a way to do this. So with this Celo Gold, you have a vote. And this means that the community gets to decide how this financial system is run. Recently, carbon offsetting was voted into effect using a project called Project Wren. This was super momentous for the entire Celo community because we can program all these features, but if the community doesn't want it, it's not going to go into effect. So last week, they decided that being the first carbon neutral blockchain was really important, and now it is. And finally, regeneration. The platform can be leveraged to inspire real-world change. In the future, one could receive a reward for regenerative behavior. For example, one could get rewarded by a small sum of money for participating in ocean cleanup, planting trees, or improving their agricultural practices for a more sustainable world. So we're not just trying to keep the planet as is, we're trying to make it better for the generations to come. The next one I'm going to go through is money as an ecology. How do we create prosperity in communities that have different needs? We believe they should have monetary systems that speak to them. For example, many communities don't have good internet. There's no infrastructure, and they can be forced to pay up to $150 a month for limited, spotty internet. That's incredible. The Celo platform is allowing Althea to build an application so that anyone can set up internet powered by solar panels. They can then sell this internet to their neighbors and friends and create their own internet cafe. Now, that community has a new form of money that really resonates to all those people there and creates an entire new little economy inside of that community. So these are only a few examples of the applications built on the Celo platform. Because the foundation of the platform, these 5 features of money, we believe that we can really have our mission come to life of building a financial system that creates the conditions for prosperity for everyone. And this brings me back to my story. For me, prosperity is having the ability to empower communities around me. Every day, I get to go to work with my dog Lila, who's pictured here, which is crucial to my happiness, and work towards a world where everyone's unique purpose shines. I'm now going to invite our panelists up to introduce themselves and talk about their own journeys, and then we'll open it up for Q&As. If you already have questions, please add them to the Ask a Question bottom at the bottom of the screen, and then you can also upvote your favorites so they're more likely to get answered. So next, we'll have Jackie talk about her journey.
Great, thank you so much, Laurence. I'm also super excited to be here since UCLA is also my alma mater. I'll just say a few words to get to know me a little bit better, but I also, I'm Bruin. I studied political science and graduated many years ago. And really, back then, my aspirations, my dream job back then was to work for the UN. And that was primarily because I love studying international relations and politics, and also just wanted to change the world. And so, really learning about these different systems and organizations, UN was really something that was drawn to me. One of the things that I did also realize when I was in school was that I also needed to learn some new skills. And so, in addition to a liberal arts background, I also wanted to get more of a quantitative background. So in addition to interning in a bunch of NGOs and nonprofits, I also wanted to learn some quantitative skills by going into finance. So went into traditional finance and quickly realized that it wasn't mission-driven enough. So pivoted after graduation and made my way into tech. I was super lucky and honored to have worked for companies like Google, Twitter, and Spotify. I worked at Google for 8 years in many different capacities, in BD and sales, and product and international growth. You can see a picture of me there with my teammates in Brazil in our São Paulo office. So in that 8 years, not only was I able to work in these different roles, but was able to also launch products to millions of people. Additionally, I was able to live in different places around the world. So Brazil being one of them, where I spent 2.5 years of my career and life there. Learned so much about the culture and the people, and also worked in markets like India, Argentina, as well as Mexico. So love that international growth aspect. And, basically after those 8 wonderful years at Google, I figured that it was time for me to move to another company that was growing internationally. And that's how I landed at Twitter. I actually went into global product marketing, which wasn't really a defined role at the time. And found that was my sweet spot, because basically in product marketing, you get to do 2 things. The first half of it is that you get to be an advocate for the user and really understand markets and kind of the psychology around why people would want to use products. And then the second half is that you get to work with teams like product engineering to help build them, but then also to launch and market them. So I found that was really fulfilling for me. So I ended up doing that for many years, both at Twitter and Spotify, where I just came from. And then now I landed at cLabs, and I've only actually been at the company for 3 months now, and this is my first job in blockchain. The reason why I mention that is that it's a complete pivot from consumer tech, now learning and working in crypto. And really, it's really a challenge and a great opportunity to help consumers understand this complex world of crypto and try to figure out how does it fit into their lives. So I think Laurence's introduction to really what we're doing and the mission that we're aiming for to serve that 1.7 billion is really what motivates me and what brings me to cLabs. So I'll kick it over to Nitya.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Jackie. Hi, everyone. Similarly, really happy to be here today. I'm not a Bruin, but I am a SWE alum, and the organization did so much for me when I was an undergrad. And so, super excited to be here and be talking to y'all. But about me, I went to MIT, graduated with degrees in computer science and math. So in general, since I was pretty young, I knew I wanted to do something in the math, science, and engineering realm. Got to computer science through robotics, actually. And so kind of was on this very somewhat defined path, or at least I thought I knew what I wanted to do for a long time. And then as I was finishing college, I was thinking a lot about how I wanted to use my skills and kind of the impact I wanted to have on the world. And a lot of that revolved around kind of bigger industries or bigger problems. Like I had a sense of really wanting to, as an individual, have as much impact as possible. And that was always something that was top of mind for me. And so I really wanted to work at a startup, and I wanted to just be in a space where there was a lot of work to do and where I felt like I could individually do a lot. And so I started out as a software engineer at a small fintech startup where I was working on lending, actually. And so I didn't really intend to go into finance specifically, but saw finance and healthcare actually was the other space I was really excited about, as these industries that have worked in similar ways for a long time and that have an opportunity with tech broadly to really kind of make big strides in what they can do for people. And so with Blend, which was the startup I was at, I was working on algorithms for fair lending. So I, at this point, got really excited about the ability that fintech and that tech has to make finance more empowering and more inclusive, and realized that kind of the additional transparency of technology just has an opportunity to change an industry that for a long time has been seen as kind of exclusionary or as kind of run by a few for a few, and felt like I had a lot of opportunity to change that. And during that time, as the company grew, I moved from engineering into eng management and leading engineering teams. And this was also something that I really enjoyed, where in addition to thinking about all of the details of how something worked, I was also able to think a little bit more about like how teams worked and how to inspire people and how to kind of work with others and work cross-functionally as well. And that was something that I really enjoyed. And so that kind of led to my journey at cLabs. So interestingly enough, for those of you who are kind of thinking about careers after school, I actually found out about Celo and found out about cLabs because of an internship that I did, where I worked at a company that was founded by the folks who went on to found the Celo project. And so this was, I guess, a really cool thread professionally, but was really inspired by the mission of being able to bring power back to consumers and the ability to make basic financial services more accessible and also more empowering to people. And so kind of following that same vein of like transparency as a way to empower, this is something that really spoke to me. I'd been interested in blockchain since college from mostly the academic perspective. Like I'd been interested in them from both the security perspective as well as like the algorithms around consensus. But then kind of in the last couple of years, just really started to understand the human potential that they have. And that ultimately led me to join this team. And then I'll talk about this more, but I've been in product most recently. And so working on how to create great products for consumers and developers within the Celo ecosystem. And with that, I'll hand it off to Anna.
Thanks, Nitya. So hi, I'm Anna, also really happy to be here. I attended MIT, graduated pretty recently last year. I got degrees in computer science and economics and took a bit of a non-traditional path. I was originally studying research economics, so I had spent time at the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank. And then partway through school, I did an internship at the World Bank and was assigned some pretty boring work of sorting through documents and decided to automate that. And so that went pretty well. And I ended up starting a company out of that, leaving school for a while. And that's kind of how I got exposed to Silicon Valley, raised money from Y Combinator and kind of got exposed to tech through that. Learned how to build software just like out of a need to sort documents rather than like going into school with an intention of that. But found that that was a really good way to get into the industry. And then I joined cLabs about 2 years ago. When I met the team, it was like I found kind of the perfect blockchain project. I had gotten into crypto from mining Ethereum in my dorm room, but early on at MIT, I was involved in the MIT Bitcoin Club and had the opportunity to go to the Ivory Coast and explain Bitcoin to regulators. And while there, I had met someone who was from Zimbabwe and showed me a picture of a toilet with a sign over it that said, like, please don't use Zimbabwe dollar bills as toilet paper. And just because of the hyperinflation, they had to put that sign up. And so to me, that was kind of a moment where I was like, okay, like crypto is cool because I can make money in my dorm room mining with these computers, but actually there are people who need this technology much more. And so finding Celo as a project kind of was the perfect application of that technology to the markets that need it most.
Awesome, thank you. So we'll invite everyone back up. Let me just bring them up and then we'll have some questions. Bring Nitya back up. Perfect. Great. So if you do have questions, I saw that some people are already adding them in, so that's wonderful. And we will start with, what does it mean for you to work for a mission-driven company?
I can start. Yeah, I think for me, what's really inspiring about it is how it transcends like every level of what we do. So like everything from kind of the what we talk about and what we do and what we prioritize, but all the way down to even like how we talk about what we want to do, and like talk about the impact that we want to have. Like it's really common in designing a feature for someone to bring up like a possibility of like an edge case having unforeseen impacts on a group of people who we want to serve. And I think just this idea that we're not trying to build something just for the sake of like being the best or for like kind of winning in a sense, but it's more about like achieving a specific goal. And it goes down to like everything from like what we talk about at lunch to like how we build the product.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, being mission driven is a combination of feeling a connection to my own values and the work that I'm contributing to. So that's like a huge one for me, especially, you know, having worked for a bunch of companies where like I love the products that I use and I really believe that this should be something that everyone should use. So I feel the same way at cLabs for Celo, where it's like, even though it's not out there yet, like I feel like it's something that's needed in the world. So I feel that connection. So that's one part of it. And then the second part is like having impact. And so like having impact in many ways could be like, you know, seeing people actually use the thing. Like I find a lot of joy in that, but then also having impact could be scale, right? Like, you know, is this solving a big problem for something that's needed? So it's that connection and impact that really makes something, you know, attracts me to the mission.
I think one thing that I didn't realize when joining a mission-driven company is that like everyone else will have joined the company because they want to work at a mission-driven company. And so it's just really great to work with people who are very like-minded and who all care very deeply about kind of building a better world and working towards that together.
I echo all those sentiments. So next question, Jackie. So you were just talking about your life and you interned at NGOs, then you went into finance, then you went into tech. This is such a broad range of areas. Can you talk about what was behind your decision-making and what led you to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, honestly, I think, you know, when thinking about like the decisions I made, it was a combination of like, you know, things like I would just want to travel. I want to see the world, you know, and have those types of experiences and opportunities. But then when I really think about like what was behind the desire to travel and to do new things, it's really about this curiosity and wanting to continually evolve and to try new things. And so, you know, I was lucky enough to have started my career at a place like Google when the company was expanding like crazy internationally and opening up a bunch of new business lines. Like when I joined, Google was just search. And now, I mean, what is Google not into? And so when things were growing like crazy, you know, it was like you were able to choose your own path and really work on whatever you wanted to work on. So whatever you raised your hand to do, you could usually do it. And I love that abundance of opportunity and in that environment and that autonomy to learn and grow. And so like, once I got a taste of that, you know, in that environment, I was like, oh, like this is the environment I want to be in. Additionally, you know, it was like Google had this great mission to make all the information, you know, universally accessible to the world. And so knowing that that was kind of the environment that I loved and working for a company like that, I actively chose that in my other opportunities. So like, you know, joining Twitter, I also wanted to join a company where they were also expanding internationally. And then personally, like my next evolution in my career then was to get more leadership skills and opportunities. You know, because when I was at Google, I was, you know, at IC and kind of had led like big projects, but never had actually like run a team. And so I knew for me to be able to do that, I would need to jump and maybe join a smaller company, especially knowing what I knew from my experience at Google. And I'm really glad that I made that bet because, you know, very quickly I was able to build a team from scratch, you know, have and manage teams all around the world in my 3 years there. And so again, like building off of the theme of learning and growing and having that autonomy and really kind of taking my career to where I wanted to go. And so that's kind of led me to joining cLabs. And so that was like another jump that I made in a completely new industry in blockchain and crypto to learn something new. And so this is another adventure for me as well. So I think that like that kind of desire to continually learn and evolve is really what drives my decision-making when it comes to my career.
That's great. Thank you. Anna, so I know a bit about your background. I know you went a little bit into it just when you were introducing yourself. But at the age of 20, you were interning at the World Bank, and then you ended up starting a company out of your work there. How did you take that first step? What did you learn? And what helped you choose to join cLabs after that?
Yeah, so I think the first step was just like recognizing this problem of like me and the other interns don't want to spend our entire summer sorting through 10,000 boring documents. And so kind of coming out of that, it just like, okay, so maybe we can take like a machine learning approach. And that was pretty effective. And so I guess first step was like recognizing a problem. And then I guess trying to figure out the skills to solve it, because I actually didn't really have them. Like I was able to kind of get this machine learning stuff working, but I hadn't built software before. And so even as we were selling to the World Bank and to some other government agencies, I would just have them email me their documents and like run this Python program locally on my computer and email them back because I didn't really know how to build a web app, right? And so I think because I was starting with a problem and then building the skills that I needed, I was able to learn very quickly. I was able to like find a lot of people who were willing to help me because I had kind of this problem in mind. And I think that we take that approach, or I've been able to find opportunities to take that approach at cLabs as well. So for example, we had a pilot in the Philippines where there were some connectivity issues. And so finding ways to build out like a low connectivity mode to make sure that the app stays very stable when the internet can drop out or when the internet's very expensive. And so building out Forno, which is kind of similar to Infura, if people are familiar with Ethereum, in response to that. So that's why I like being at cLabs.
Awesome, thank you. I can see a little trend with you and Jackie on really being self-starters and wanting to do that and having that autonomy. So Nitya, I know you well. We have been at cLabs for almost 2 years now. And I remember when you came in, you're a software engineer, and then you actually transitioned into being a product manager. And I'm curious, did you always know that that was the path you wanted to take? What guided you to that decision? Was it really hard transitioning? And how is your day-to-day life different from being a software engineer and now a product manager?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess first off, like one of the things that I love the most about being in like smaller company and like startup environments is that there's this ability to kind of look at the work that needs to happen and the problems that need to be solved and what you can do and kind of find the best spot to be in where you can have the most impact. And that was something that I was able to get a lot out of at my previous job, where I moved into management and got to kind of see that piece of things. And in that job, I was working really closely with product, and I had PM'd some technical teams, and it was kind of a that mix between engineering and business problems is somewhere where I feel like I am able to kind of use my brain in a lot of different ways. Where with engineering, I really love the ability to dig into something and figure out exactly how it works and think about the best way to solve it. And then with product, I feel like there's this idea of what problems to solve. And so the two go really well together. And so when I came to the cLabs team, there was kind of an opportunity in the sense that we were building this product, we were building the Celo wallet, and we knew that we needed to take it to market, and we knew that we needed to start thinking about the product piece of it. And so the opportunity kind of opened up where there was this need to think about kind of where the product would go. And kind of as someone who really enjoys being in the middle of both of these functions, felt like it was a great opportunity to kind of have impact on the organization, and to also grow and learn a lot along the way. And so that was the main motivator. I think, especially being in the blockchain space, I still feel like I'm able to kind of flex that technical muscle now and again, because the problems can be pretty meaty, which is always fun. But then being able to couple that and connect that to Celo's broader mission, which is centered around impact to end users and impact to people, thinking about how to connect the two just makes me really excited. And so I guess to answer your question, I hadn't always seen myself moving to product or anything of that sort, but I always knew that I liked being in between the two. And so have always just kind of tried to find opportunities to do that. As far as the day-to-day goes, they're different in the sense that I get to meet with a lot of different functions, where in engineering, that's definitely the case as well. But it's part of being in product is being the glue between a lot of different teams. And so there's a sense of needing to understand the concerns and understand all of your different stakeholders. And that's something that kind of leads to just kind of more time spent in meetings versus more time spent I guess coding day to day in the case of software engineering. Then other differences, I guess there's a little bit more time communicating, but overall, it is still you have the problem, you try to break it down, you try to solve it in the best way possible. And so there are a lot of similarities in that regard.
Awesome. As a little follow-up question, so when you saw this product manager job open up per se, were you kind of pushed into that by colleagues, or were you hey, this is an opportunity and I want to take it and let me see if I can?
Yeah, great question. So I think there was definitely a combination of both, where I was informally doing kind of a lot of the work that was that kind of fell under that job description. And so more so than one day kind of stepping over a line, there was actually a period of a few months where I was still doing engineering work, but also the PM for the team. That was almost a little bit of a, I'd forget which hat I was wearing at what time, which was kind of a fun period. But it was a little bit of both. I think without the kind of encouragement and support of my team, I would not have maybe felt as comfortable raising my hand and saying that this was the direction I wanted to go in. But I think it was a combination of already kind of doing a lot of those things, having the support of the team in making that move, and then having a sense that I'd be able to add a lot of value in the role.
Awesome. Okay, next question. How has being a female been an advantage in your career?
Well, I could take that one. I don't know. This one was a little bit tough for me when I was thinking through this question. I would say that I don't know if it's an advantage or not, but what I've experienced from being a female, having, been working for quite some time, is that, it really just opens up the ability to connect with other women and have that shared experience. And whether that's a woman that you're being mentored by. It really helps to kind of have that connection with someone to kind of share, struggles, joys, et cetera. Because I just feel like, another woman I was able to relate to, and they were able to relate to me. And I most importantly felt that as a manager and a leader of a team is when I was able to be vulnerable with my own team. And so I think that's like, maybe that was an advantage of being a woman. It's hard to say because it's just being, but I do think by opening up and sharing experiences, whether they're positive or not so positive, has been a way to kind of connect with other women at work.
Yeah, to build on to what Jackie said, like similarly, I really liked the framing of this question, even if it made it hard to answer, because I think that a lot of the time we talk about like the disadvantages of being female, or like ways that it's like maybe impacted success versus like kind of promoted it. I think with, I kind of building off what Jackie said, there are certain shared experiences that a lot of women in tech have, and on the engineering side, like women on engineering teams that may not have as many women on them. And especially when you are more senior on these teams, or when you, once you have more experience, there's an opportunity to really be a voice and an advocate for things that maybe like didn't really hinder you, but that maybe you would have preferred to not deal with. Like, if they're things that are maybe just if someone tends to interrupt, or someone tends to behave a certain way that isn't necessarily like hard for only women, but there's an opportunity to kind of speak, to kind of use your voice and use your platform to kind of make things better and make things easier for others. So I think that's been an advantage. I think additionally, there's an opportunity to like, there have been environments where I've like stood out in being female, and sometimes that can be a bad thing, and that you're like the only woman in the room or only woman at the table. But there is also an opportunity to kind of take that and make what you want to of it, where there's a sense of you can really like own who you are, own your brand, and be you. And I think it's really important. One thing I always have to remind myself is to do that, to like not kind of let numbers get into my head, or let like demographics get into my head, but to more just like be who I am and like own it.
Yeah, to build on that, I think that kind of more generally diversity, I guess if you're coming from like an underrepresented group, your perspective is actually like really valuable, because you might be one of the only people in the room who has a certain kind of experiences. And so being able to share that and kind of like add a lot of value and just like a user experience perspective is pretty cool.
I agree. Actually, so cLabs was my first professional experience being in the real world. And something that I learned very quickly was talking about culture add, not culture fit. And I think that transcends what gender you are or what ethnicity or where you grew up. It's just, how are you going to add? And that's what we care about, which I think is something that's really beautiful. Okay, so next question is, how have you fueled your career path, personal growth, and what has been the most difficult part? It's a pretty loaded question.
I can do that one, or I can kick it off, just because I'm going through it right now. So I mentioned the theme of curiosity of learning and changing and evolving. But the part of change is that like you're sometimes starting either from scratch, or you're just starting from a different place. And so by moving to cLabs and by going into blockchain without having any prior experience to that, especially at this point in my career, it has been a struggle. From a learning curve perspective, I mean, blockchain is not an easy thing to learn. You don't just like pick it up like that. That's one. But two, it's like, also having come with the background and experience, it's like not being able to fully realize that, primarily because, especially in a marketing role, a lot of it is like knowing your audience, and this is an audience I don't know. And so like that has been a little bit of a struggle, but at the same time, like I really reflect on how much of a joy it is to be a student again. I mean, there was a reason why I decided to take this leap and to join a new industry, right? Because I saw the potential of this really super fascinating technology and this budding industry, right? And the potential specifically for Celo to have that same impact to this wide consumer audience. And so, you know, while like climbing up that steep learning curve has been a struggle, and I've been sweating a lot, like going up that hill, it's going to be super fulfilling, you know, and it has already been super fulfilling. The more and more I'm starting to understand, and the process of learning has been really great along the way. And it helps to have awesome teammates like the ladies here on the screen to rely on. And so while it's a struggle, it has a payoff to it.
I've found that something that I really enjoy is just like interesting technical problems. And so the challenge for me has been figuring out kind of like, how can I find these interesting problems to work on that also align with like impact in the world. And so while there's some like really cool theoretical math to do, it might not have as like tangible an effect on the world. And so I feel really grateful that at cLabs, those happen to line up. But I think that has been a tension that I've seen in my career.
Yeah, to kind of echo threads that both Jackie and Anna mentioned, I had a sports coach that would actually use the term like become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's something that's like, that I kind of remind myself of a lot, where this idea of like, if you're not feeling a little bit stretched, and you shouldn't feel stretched in your work all the time, like there are other aspects of life to stretch yourself in, but I've always felt like the most fulfilled when I feel like things are just a little bit too hard and I kind of have to like reach to get them. And so it's continuing to kind of check in with myself on like, oh, like what are ways that I can challenge myself, or what are ways that I can grow, and like never getting too comfortable, if that makes sense.
Definitely does. Those are great. Thank you. Okay, next one from the community is, can you talk about a failure you had and what you learned from it?
You can start on this one. This was one of the, this is the first time I was leading an engineering team, and we were responsible for rebuilding this like core system that was part of the engineering platform. And so in addition to kind of designing the system and building it, we then had to move a bunch of other services that used, that were owned by other teams onto like the new version of this infrastructure. And so we, were really thorough about figuring out what needed to be built, getting all the requirements, and kind of building the V2 of this project. But then when it came time to like get other teams to move over, we realized that like none of the teams were doing it. And they were continuing to use this like old version of the system that like everyone had like not been happy with, and there was a reason we rebuilt it. But people just didn't move over, and took the approach of like almost like if there's a carrot and a stick, we took more of the stick approach, where I went to every team and was like, hey, like we need you to rebuild that, we need you to like move things over to this like infrastructure, and if you don't do it, like we're just gonna like deprecate it, and like you won't be able to use this old system anymore. And so naturally people were like quite upset with this. And one thing, and so there was like backlash, and eventually we didn't, just, pull out the rug from under people. But one thing that I learned in that process was that it's really important to bring people along, and to like, you can build like the greatest thing in the world, but if you don't involve the people who are using it, and if you don't kind of involve others, there's no potential for it to have the success it can.
I can give an example from a recent pilot in Kenya that we did, where we were having people earn Celo by doing digital work from their phones. And we had gotten a prototype working so that they could see how much they had earned in the Celo wallet in just a few weeks. And it was really a quick process of building this. And we had done some testing, but not too extensive of testing. And so one of the first days of the pilot, after people had done work on their phones, they came to cash out, and people had earned a lot more money than we expected them to. And we kind of, the numbers didn't line up, and we were a little bit confused. And we realized that there was a bug where they could hit cash out multiple times if you hit it really quickly. And so what you needed is you needed like a slow internet connection and a slow phone so that it didn't update in time. And then you could really just like jam on this button and make 10 times the amount that you actually earned. And so it was good that we tracked that down before cashing people out. But it was also just a reminder that like, no matter how much testing you do in the US, I mean, like we had like throttled the internet in our San Francisco office to try to replicate this. We have low-end devices that we had tested on, but we didn't catch that exact case. And so it's just so important to like go in market and kind of test on the ground to run into those sorts of issues, because that's the best way to catch them.
Yeah, my failure is actually kind of related to that, but slightly different. This was my first international assignment that I ever did when I was working at Google. I got sent to Singapore since we were opening up a new office there, and they wanted to do some training on the product that I worked on. So I was like, oh, I was so excited. I was like, okay, great. You know, prepared everything, like all the training decks and whatnot. And I get to Singapore, and I realized that like everything that I prepared wasn't viable because in the US, Google was actually the #1 search engine. And so everything was based off of that. When I got to Singapore, I realized that Google wasn't #1. I think at the time it was Yahoo. They had some other local search engines in Southeast Asia as well. And so everything that I worked on wouldn't work because simply like they still had to start from brand building and like just explaining what Google was in the market. And so I learned from that was that very similar to Anna is that like, you know, getting that local intelligence and nuance and like taking that into account even before you start planning can really help shape how you can contribute. And so not to say that was a fail because you always learn from it, but you know, certainly a lesson that stuck with me, and I'm glad I learned that early on in my career.
I love it. Cool, thank you. Okay, so our next question is, are there also career opportunities which are not engineering related? And I can go ahead and answer that. There definitely is tons of career opportunities. We actually have eco leads in different countries that Jackie can talk to. But really, Celo is this global community. So people who want to build their own products, there's actually grant program where you can submit your own idea and then you get funded for it. There's ecosystem fund. There's tons of different ways to get involved in the Celo community. And the best thing to do is get onto Discord, which there's the call to action button, which is below to learn about that, and also go to celo.org. Do any of you guys want to add to that?
Yeah, I think since I'm the other one with the non-technical background, having worked at tech companies for the majority of my career, I mean, you know, like entering in roles like a business development or a sales role is a great way to learn because like you're there and you're explaining the products to customers and you know, probably utilizing some of the skills that you learned in, you know, your liberal arts degree of like, communication and things like that to better explain the technology to your audience. And then like through working at, you know, these types of tech companies, especially in a company like cLabs where the technology is complex and really interesting to learn, it's like you learn through that and then you can basically take that knowledge and try to figure out roles that could be a fit. And if you want to get into a more technical role, you'll already have that knowledge and that background, especially in a budding industry like blockchain.
Definitely. Awesome. So next question is, on the theme of engineering for purpose, how does cLabs manage to be both a successful company while also doing everything for a greater globally beneficial purpose?
Let me turn your mute.
Oh no. I took you off. You're good now. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I can take a stab at that. But I think one thing that I love so much about blockchains is that incentives are extremely explicit. And I think that's something that that like kind of in the creation of Celo was very like significantly and kind of diligently thought through around like how is every single player in this ecosystem incentivized, and like what are people ultimately like working towards. And in kind of the aspects of the Celo technology, like whether it's like the on-chain reserve that can kind of encode value in different ways, all the way to like wanting to have greater circulation of a stable value asset, which has the ability to give more people access to sound currency. Kind of the interplay between these different incentives, I think, aligns things really well, so that like making a lot of these, like solving a lot of these problems enables kind of the mission to exist and to manifest in like greater ways.
And I think beyond cLabs, we're seeing more and more like for-profit, for social good companies. And I think companies are realizing that a lot of really talented people value working at a company with a social mission. And so kind of, I think there are more and more opportunities as time goes on for roles like this.
Yeah, I agree. It's, you know, like success and doing for good aren't mutually exclusive. Like they can coexist. And I think that's the reason why like tech has been such a like a great space, because you see these like very mission-driven companies be able to do both at the same time and like be wildly profitable. And so, you know, I think that like what we're doing here at cLabs is definitely both, you know, a mixture of incentives, but it's also, that is the theme of today, is like, you know, companies that are doing social good, but also having you know, great financial impact as well.
Great. Next question. Jackie, how was it to go from working in large companies like Google and Twitter to a startup like cLabs?
It's a great question. Yeah, this is actually my first official startup experience. You know, there are times where it does feel very different, primarily because, you know, while there's just the size in general, like, you know, obviously coming from a big company and having it be very matrix and having to go through processing communication. I think that's kind of what, you know, you have at a big company. It's not so much at a smaller one, because you can actually just ping someone. Like I actually sit behind Anna when we would normally be in the office, you know, and when Nitya, she's just a few rows over, and we're literally just in one building. So I think like working in a startup, it's like communication just flows a lot faster. But I would say it's not that different in other ways because, you know, there's still, we still have OKRs, you know, at a startup like cLabs, right? And it was the same process that we had at Google and Twitter and Spotify. Also having worked at a bunch of emerging markets and international teams in my career, a lot of those offices were just as big as cLabs or even smaller. And so while, you know, a lot of my background experience are at big companies, at the time that I joined, it wasn't so big. And then even then, I had worked at, you know, smaller entities or even emerging businesses. And so it actually feels very familiar to what we're doing at cLabs and the pace and kind of, you know, like this like beautiful chaos that we're all used to. So yeah, so I think that like, it's not so different or as different as you would think. And so that's what I've been learning in my first few months.
Awesome. Okay, next question. Has there been an occasion when an important problem was identified and Celo might not be a direct fit? Would you be able to share that experience in your reflections? feel like we're stumped.
Yeah. I guess maybe, and to get into like maybe the semantics to make my answer a bit clearer. So there's like the Celo like project and protocol, and then there's cLabs, which is like the organization that the four of us work for, that is like building the Celo project. There have definitely been occasions where like we maybe we didn't feel like we were the right team to be building something. And that kind of gave birth to the grants program that Laurence had just talked about, where there is a sense of certain problems are like much better solved by people who are maybe a part of the communities or have or are in some way directly positioned to like solve those problems really well. And so I think it is like a really important skill. This is a great question around like recognizing the strengths of your team and areas where another team might be able to do better.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, next question. And I actually have a personal question for you all. But how important is familiarity with blockchain to be successful at cLabs?
Should I?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm successful, but I had shared that this is my first, role in blockchain. I didn't come with much experience. I mean, I had been interested in it and technology, and I had some crypto. I bought from Coinbase, but I definitely wasn't like, as into it or down the rabbit hole as some of the other folks had been. I don't know, honestly, if I would have chosen another blockchain company. I mean, I specifically went into this one, and especially, like leaving a great role that I had at Spotify, it was compelling for me to specifically choose cLabs, primarily because it was not only the power of blockchain technology, but it was also the fact that there was another part of the technology that had the opportunity and the unique ability to actually be usable to people. And so, as a marketer, I mean, that's an amazing opportunity, right? It's like, that's what I really wanted to do next in my career, was to like work on a thing, like a product that either had an awareness issue or a perception issue. And I was like, oh, great. Like this crypto project is actually like the perfect fit between the two, because like crypto has a perception problem. And like, the fact that like Celo has like the opportunity to do this is not very well known. And so, I was like, I couldn't think of a better challenge in addition, like a professional challenge, in addition to like an amazing mission to work on. So I think that like, obviously didn't have blockchain technology, but I saw that unique opportunity and like my own personal connection there. And so it's like, as I'm kind of like going up the steep learning curve in terms of learning, the industry and technology and all this other stuff, that's really what's driving me, is the fact that like, this has the potential to impact billions. And so, it's a challenge to work on that, and an honor.
I think another thing that's cool about the blockchain space is it's just so new, right? So even if someone does have a lot of experience, like they can have at most like a few years, maybe like 10 years if they were really early, but we're all kind of like answering these new questions and like kind of designing the best practices as we go. And so I think actually the blockchain space is a great space to start, because everyone is kind of just getting started. So.
Yeah, I agree. Nitya, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I agree.
Yeah, for full transparency, for me, when I started, I remember I had my interview and I was like, oh my God, blockchain, what is it? And I spent 24 hours researching, and I was like, okay, I have a little grasp on this. And the biggest thing was when I first started, they're like, everyone is learning this together. Everyone is writing the playbook together. And constantly we're saying like, okay, let's try something new. Let's see if it works, because this industry is being defined. And for me, 2 years later, yes, I know more about blockchain. I would not say I'm an expert at all, but really it's about understanding the users and understanding what impact that you can have. And you really don't need blockchain experience. You just need to have a passion to do good, in my opinion.
One thing to add to that is that like, like, I was very, I mean, obviously I was very honest about it. I wasn't trying to like front that like I knew, you know, I had all this like experience or knew much about it. And it was actually good, you know, I mean, I was told that it was a good thing. They're like, no, that's a good thing. It's like, we actually want someone to like not talk about it in this like crypto jargony way. And so, you know, while like, yes, you do have to like eventually understand like the way things work to be able to speak accurately to it, the fact that, you know, I haven't been like mired in all this like jargon, it's actually going to help, because I mean, the whole point is to drive understanding and to make this thing like understandable and usable to like the normal person. And so to not have like, you know, a lot of that experience is beneficial in that sense.
I mean, it goes back to that mission of prosperity for everyone. It's not prosperity for the blockchain space. And so with that, we welcome all these diversities of thoughts and experiences and backgrounds, because that's the most important thing, or else we're just talking the same exact people over and over again. And along those lines, my personal question to you three is, working for a mission-based company, you can be really, really passionate about this mission. And oftentimes that could lead potentially to not having this like work-life balance because you're so passionate. So how do you each figure that out, and how do you maintain that work-life balance?
I think it's particularly hard now during this shelter-in-place time. The lines between personal and work are pretty blurred, but it's true. I mean, you know, it's a drive to work, right? And there's a sense of urgency to get this out. I mean, I would say it's like, you know, just carving out time to make sure I spend time with my friends and family. I'm really lucky to have an amazing dog, and so we go out and, you know, make sure to go for walks and things like that, and also see this time of kind of this like working from home and trying to balance that and manage that actively, and also really harnessing that flexibility to take time for myself. So I think that that's really important to do.
Yeah. Similarly, I'm probably about like a foot away from my bed right now. And so definitely the work-life balance lines can be physically blurred sometimes. But yeah, I think similar to what Jackie said, just like continuing to check in with myself. I think especially during this time, like there's with separation, I think there are a lot of there's a need to be very deliberate about carving out that space. I think there is also an opportunity to like figure out or to work during the times when you're most productive, which is, I think, like something that is always possible. But if you're in a workplace and you're like in an office for a set amount of time, it can be a little bit harder to like explicitly create that. And so this is something that I'm kind of figuring out right now, where I've noticed that it can be really helpful for me to take like half an hour as a break in the afternoon, or like take an hour as a break and go for a run. And that means that I'm like a little bit more productive, like before and after. And so kind of like trying to check in with myself has been really helpful.
Yeah, and I think reminding myself that I'll be more productive if I take a break, and kind of like that work-life balance is actually a very good investment in work as well. Can be nice. And then just enjoying work and being like, wow, like I really enjoy spending time with my coworkers. Like, let's put some silly snap filters on this video. And so enjoying that too.
I love it. So there's one last question that came in the nick of time, and it is, who are Celo's major competitors? Are there any other crypto projects with this same mission-driven goal?
You know, that's a good question. When I was interviewing, I actually asked that question because I wasn't sure, right? Like crypto, or like blockchain, crypto, it's a new space for me. And even just doing research on the internet, it was hard to know, okay, like what are the like competitors? And I mean, now that we're in it, it's like, okay, there's other like stable coins out there, but definitely not with the same type of application. You know, we've been doing launches and being out in the press, and a lot of the press has been talking about Libra being a competitor of ours, which is not intentional on our end. And, you know, I've heard one of our coworkers, Tim, talk about that when he was asked that question in an event like this, like, well, what about Libra and Celo? And he's like, you know, like the mission we have is a shared one, meaning that like, if we're trying to bank this 1.7 billion unbanked, right, and to provide financial tools and access, like that's a huge mission, and one that isn't just for one company or one entity to go after. It should be something that more people can work on and try to achieve, right? And so it's a massive one that like, it really shouldn't be seen as a competition, but really like a shared massive mission that many people should tackle. And so like our stance is like, we should really welcome others to serve that population, because you know, they've been kind of on the fringes for so long.
That's great. Thank you so much for answering all these questions. I know I learned a ton from all of you, and I hope everyone else did too. We're just gonna wrap up with a couple things. Let's see here if I can share my screen again. Great. So if you are interested in Celo or the mission and cLabs, there's a couple things that you can do. Chat.celo.org, that's where you can connect with the community. Everyone on cLabs is there, as well as all the projects building on top of it. News.celo.org is to sign up for the newsletter, and events.celo.org is any of the events we are doing. You can also follow the Celo page, which is where this was hosted on Crowdcast. And on Friday, we have our Prosper Retreat every Friday at 8 a.m., which is a wonderful thing to go to. This week, we're going to talk about the protectors of prosperity. And the week after, the three founders of Celo, Sep, Renee, and Merrick, are actually going to talk about the failures that brought them to creating a beautiful new system that they think is possible. And finally, please, please, please give us feedback. My sister Marie-Pierre really loves this feedback survey, so please do it for her and the GradSWE program so they can continue giving you all these wonderful events. And I hope you are all enjoying yourselves and staying safe, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.